I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 1, printed in Part B of House Report number 113-350, offered by Mr. Rigell of Virginia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 475, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Rigell, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
I thank the chairman, and I want to thank my friend and colleague, Chairman Henserling, and all of those who worked on this underlying legislation, H.R. 3193. My amendment strengthens that legislation, and I really respect how it was crafted, the legislation that underlies my amendment. It really is much needed. My amendment is focused on one of the most critical ingredients that is necessary for those who are trying to start a new business or to grow an existing business, and that is access to credit. Now, I offer my amendment based on my own real-world experience. It was about 22 years ago that I started my business, and I was able to start it and to grow it and to say these wonderful words to so many fellow Americans in Virginia's 2nd Congressional District: "You're hired." And I was able to say those words because one of the ingredients available to me was access to credit. And I offer my amendment today based as well on the clear and united and truly rational voice that's being articulated by Virginia's 2nd Congressional District, and that is that the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau is truly and irrefutably, in their view and in mine, damaging and harming their ability to have access to credit. Common ground is something that I come to work every day seeking to advance. I'm convinced absolutely that it's here. It can be found. In fact, this gridlock that we so often experience truly is hurting our country. As I listen to my colleagues so often on the other side, and I've been up here and had the privilege of serving in this institution of 3 years, quite frankly, when I hear statements like "we don't care about consumers," I take offense at this. And I've listened to it for 3 years, and I think that it does a disservice to this House and to the American people to continually claim that we don't care about the American consumer, or that we don't care about the environment or the poor or the aged. Indeed, we do. And this represents my best judgment and the best judgment of so many, that this underlying legislation and my particular amendment would help consumers. I'm convinced of this. What my amendment does is it requires the Bureau to simply do this: to consider, to calculate in a very careful way exactly what impact, what adverse impact that these regulations that are being put forth by this organization, how it would affect credit. Now, indeed, isn't this common ground? It's really common sense. Before you take any action to do something, you ought to take a moment to consider what that action might do in inhibiting individual Americans and businesses from accessing credit. I think it's critical, too, that we look at the organization itself. This is an organization that is really outside of the scope of accountability that we really should be requiring of each and every agency in the federal government. It's largely outside the accountability and the influence of Congress. And this is quite striking. It's largely out of the influence of the President. And in a unique way, and I think in a harmful way, it's largely outside of the accountability of the court system. Look, common sense will just tell you that's not a good idea for any agency to be outside of accountability. Each member here is accountable to our own district. The actions that have been taken by this organization already, sure, we can find a few that have been helpful and I think ought to continue. Taking care of our military, making sure that businesses operate in an ethical manner. But overwhelmingly what we're seeing is this: that the sum of all things is it's hurting the American consumer, it's hurting our ability, fellow Americans, to access credit. That's why I urge support for the underlying legislation and my amendment. Retain the balance of my time and yield back.